Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a viewer replay courtesy of Fresh Paint. I decided to break up the warships videos a little with some tanks action, because at the moment, well, we had a sports spotlight, and then I've got the French cruiser previews, plus there's an Italian premium cruiser to look at as well. So I thought I might break it up a little with some tanks, because I know not everybody's into warships. Weirdos. Some of you weird people even still like playing World of Tanks. I mean, it's just bizarre. But anyway, Fresh Paint is indeed one of those weird people. And there's a couple of things to note about this replay. Even though I've said it's not warships, it's sort of a warships connection. There's a lot of TOGs on each team. In fact, it's like a Royal Navy fleet review in here. The enemy team in particular has got, what, half a dozen of them? His own team's only got 3, but still 9 TOGs out of a total of 30. Yeah, this has to have been a TOG rental event on the NA server for there to be that many. The other thing to note is that Fresh Paint is no novice in this tank. It's his favourite tank, at a guess anyway. He's had over 2,500 battles in it, and you don't do that by accident. So he's definitely no stranger to the Chaffee, but there is going to be something that happens in this game that's never happened in any of his previous Chaffee games, or in fact any of his previous tanks games at all. So he's encountered one of the bottom tier tanks already, a somewhat hapless Panzer III, who I don't know why he went in that aggressively, but despite it being a fast tank, even in tier 6 matchmaking, it's still a pretty fast tank. It's not like it's got a particularly good gun or lots of armour in this context, so he was disposed of rather rapidly, along with his somewhat more cautious but not cautious enough platoon mate. And the fact that they came here seemingly alone was definitely not cautious, because this isn't an encounter game, this is just a regular battle. So he's got a couple of allies behind him, ready to shoot at whatever he spots. And on the other flank, well, there are a couple of their teammates, but with the sheer hit points advantage the enemy team has, even though the enemy team does have more tier 4s, just the fact that they've got twice the number of TOGs, that's a lot of hit points. And there's no artillery in this game either, so potentially they could just steamroll that flank. Although it looks like at least one of the TOGs is sailing around in the middle there for no apparent reason. So they could be using the hit points advantage to really steamroll, but I think it's only the TOG platoon and maybe one of the other TOGs along with them that's really doing that. And their own team's TOGs are in some really odd places. I think one went over to that flank to try and defend, and the other 2 are positioned very strangely indeed. So he's moved up. There doesn't seem to be anything ahead of them, but take note that the enemy team has a T-67, so that might be an issue. Meanwhile, he's having a pop at this TOG in the middle. He did load up some APCR for the TOG on the higher ground, and it doesn't have a lot of pen, this gun. The damage is okay, but given that you can and will regularly see tier 7s, and I think tier 8s, a healthy supply of APCR is probably a sensible idea if you can afford it, and Fresh Paint certainly does have a healthy supply of APCR. So there's the T-28, also a bit hapless in its matchmaking, but he had the speed to be better positioned than that and didn't really use it, so no one but himself to blame really. But having said that, you know, it's probably a newer player in a T-28, so can't hold it too much against him. And there's that T-67 who, having positioned himself behind the cap, is in an excellent position to spot and try and pepper anything with rather dangerous shells if anything gets close enough with that, well, probably the 76mm. Sometimes you see them with a 57mm gun, but much more often the 76. So basically, I think the same amount of damage as Fresh Paint, but better penetration. So he's fired off some HE shells. He's only had a couple of them available, and it looks like one of them may well have hit, and if it has, it's hopefully done some module damage. So with the KV-85 moving up along the A line, he decides to press forward as well, though clearly the T-67 has moved. Meanwhile, on the rest of the map, it's not looking so rosy. They have pushed through, so between the TOGs and an E2, yeah, they have just been able to slaughter everything. So there's the T-67, takes some hits, he's firing APCR because of course he is, But Fresh Paint's able to jink and avoid 2 of the shots and actually finish off the T-67, who wasn't actually trying to avoid them. He was just sitting there and hoping his rate of fire and his APCR would carry him through. So, okay, a bit more health lost, but he still can maybe take another hit or 2 if he has to. Oh, that's a bit of an unlucky bounce. So yeah, the M4 improved, has obviously noted the minimap and come back to maybe try and defend a bit, but despite him getting a hit into Fresh Paint, I mean, he was very low health himself, so that wasn't going to end well for him, especially not with the full health KV-85 coming up underneath him as well. So he's now all out of AP, it's just the APCR, and it's maybe not quite so necessary for this matchmaking, but it's not like you get to pick and choose your matchmaking when you're playing all the tanks, and therefore pick what ammo loadout you want to use. You just kind of have to hedge your bets. So a bit more flanking fire. KV-85 engaging the TOG, and if you can assist, that would be good, because he doesn't have a lot of teammates left. It's not like there's a lot of the enemy team left either, but a couple of them are still TOGs, and the E2, if he's got any amount of health, could also be quite dangerous. And actually we can see there one of the TOGs has got nearly 900 hit points, so yeah. But this one, however, not so much. So, an unlucky bounce there, but if he can aim into the turret, there we go. And one more might do it. Oh, never mind, KV-85 gets the kill. Okay, so they're on the cap. It's him, KV-85, who's been rather badly mauled, and a full health Sherman 3. Between them, if they work together, maybe they can do this. So he's going to reposition now, and he's actually got the best chance of spotting without being spotted, because none of the remaining enemies have a particularly good view range. The TOG is not known as a British scout tank, funnily enough. So if he can reposition himself to spot for his allies, then they can hopefully reset and take apart these TOGs and do a bit of damage. But they've actually run into the TOGs. It's not the TOGs that are on the cap, it's the E2 that's capping. And the TOGs, and despite not being platoons, are actually kind of working together, and they've taken out the KV-85 between them, and that Sherman's now in a position where he can't actually get away. So I think they were expecting the TOGs to be closer to the cap, much closer, and instead they'd gone forward to a position to actively engage the remaining allies. So fortunately the E2 is a one-shot, that TOG is a one-shot, so he dispatches them both in very rapid succession, but that still leaves this one last TOG who's got a fair chunk of health, and his remaining ally, this Sherman 3, is not going to last too much longer, so there's that TOG DPM coming into its own. So this is, on the face of it, not looking that great. He's got 12 shells left. Yeah, I've sped this up a bit here. He's got 12 shells left, and a TOG with like almost 900 hit points. But if you flip it on its head and look at it from the TOG's point of view, I mean, he's got a massive mobility disadvantage. He doesn't particularly have great armor, and especially considering that Fresh Paint's now onto his APCR. So Fresh Paint can readjust his position. He can come at this from different directions, get off a few shots here and there, and basically use his view range advantage and his camo advantage and just do a number on this guy. At least that's the theory. Now he's already spent a decent chunk of time repositioning the first time, and it's not I mean, he's going to reposition again. He's not just going to sit in the one spot. And he actually maybe spends a bit too long repositioning, in my opinion. But when you look at the timer, he does have the time to do it, and it's better if you've got the time to take a more cautious approach, because if you start to panic and think, oh, I've got to take this guy down ASAP, then that's the point where you start getting flustered and start making mistakes. And if you've got the time to use, then okay, by all means use it. I just think he's maybe being a little overly cautious, but better that than the opposite, I suppose. So once again, he's repositioned. The TOG has futilely tried to come after him. He actually gets an opportunity here where he could potentially open fire, but he recognises that it's not a particularly good angle, and he could try and go for the turret, but at this range, that's not a great shot. So he's considering it and actually does fire one, and it bounces. And maybe that's the part where he realises that he's going to have to make sure that he gets better shots, that he can get flat armour to fire at, because he's got 6 shells left. This is going to be close. There's also now only 3 minutes left. So although he does have this big mobility advantage, he can't afford to waste too much more time. We are into the dying stages of this battle. So once again, repositioning. He clearly doesn't like that position where he was, so he drives around the edge without being spotted, and this Tog's got no idea. And he's pretty much going to do what he was doing the first time. He's used this little hill here to try and acquire the Tog. Now the Tog has actually decided, I've had enough of sitting out in the open and being peppered. He knows there's not really enough time to cap without being just reset. So he then chooses to hole up even behind this house. And although Fresh Paint has managed to get in 2 more hits, that third one was not well judged. He's now got 2 shells left. And this is the point where it becomes all in the hands of RNGesus. So he goes in, he goes from the side, he thinks the Tog won't be looking, gets 1 hit into the side, and then crucially he holds fire until he knows he can get the broadside. And fortunately RNGesus does not troll him with a low damage roll, because that would have been that. He would have been out of ammo. He maybe could have run away, but it would have been a draw. It would not have been possible to win. So for all that whizzing around at the end there, that was an ace tanker, a high caliber, top gun, defender, and a fade-ins medal. And that's the thing that Fresh Paint's never done before, not in this tank or in any tank, which is basically killing the last enemy with your last shell. And it really, I mean, you can kinda force that as a situation with some tanks with low ammo or a high rate of fire, but with that particular scenario, when it basically came down to RNGesus could have trolled him but didn't, yeah, I think he probably would have much rather finished the game with a couple of rounds of ammo left just to be on the safe side. But as it was, no, he did get away with it, and I thought that was a thoroughly entertaining game overall, just from the sheer number of Togs and just how he handled it at the end there. So hopefully you were as entertained as I was, and if you were, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.